Hello everyone. This video is about the anchor points and the logic surrounding the anchor points. I'm just going to sketch some information on this document, on this video. Please ignore that I'm using the brush tool. I'm just using it to illustrate some of the ideas around anchor points. So please bear with me. I hope it works. I hope it makes sense. So I'm going to begin by describing the way that the anchors and the anchor points work. All paths that, well, let me take a step back. All shapes that we make have anchors on them. All shapes are made up of paths. All of the paths are made up of anchors. So when we describe a shape or we see a shape, it is going to be a collection of anchors and paths. So if you were to use the pen tool, which is this tool right here, this tool allows me to plot out anchors that then creates paths. So if I was to engage with this tool, I would basically plot out an anchor here and an anchor here, and it would connect a line between the two, creating something called a segment. So once again, I'm going to use the brush tool to sort of quickly illustrate some of the things that we're going to see when we use the pen tool and work with anchors. So when I click for the first time with the pen tool, you're going to get a little box that looks like this. And that box basically describes an anchor. If I was to not create a second anchor, the anchor would still be there, but it wouldn't describe a path. A path needs two anchors to be created. So if I was to click once, so here's my first anchor, and I was to click a second time, here's my second anchor, I would get a line between the two. Now if I was to click a third anchor, here's my third one, it would create a line going here. Now, you'll notice that as I'm drawing these, this is being sketched out, but whenever you draw with the pen tool and you click, release the mouse, hover over to the next spot, click again, release the mouse, hover to the next spot, you're going to get straight lines. You're going to get a straight path. Now I know this one doesn't look straight. It's because of my horrible sketch. But whenever you work with the pen tool, you're going to get a straight line. Now this path that's made up of three anchors, so this is an anchor right here. So this is an anchor right here, and this is an anchor, and this is an anchor. This is actually made up of something called a segment. Now I'm trying to write this with my mouse so it looks a little sketch. No pun intended. So this is a segment, this is a segment. So in this particular example, I have two segments. I have a segment right here and I have a segment right here. The segment's made up of three anchors. 1, 2, 3. Now this particular set of anchors and segments, collectively, we can call all of this a path. Now, I'll write the word path right here. So collectively, this is a path. The three anchors and the two segments working to describe this line is called a path. Now, there are different types of paths. There are two types of paths in Illustrator. There are what are called open paths, and there are what are called closed paths. So this is an open path. Now, what makes this an open path? What makes it an open path is that I have an end on either side. So you can sort of call it a beginning and an end to it. So there is an open area. It's not closed off onto itself. Now I'm going to draw another example over here. So if I was to create anchor 1, anchor 2, anchor 3, I would get, once again, a straight line going here, a straight line going there. Now, if I was to click a 4th time on this first anchor, so if I was to click a 4th time here, my cursor, if I'm in the pen tool, looks like this. Okay, so this is the little icon. I know it's in the wrong direction, but it sort of looks like this. Now, when I hover over my first anchor, as I'm drawing this, if I return to my first anchor, the icon is going to include a little circle next to it. Now, if I see that little circle, that indicates that it's going to create a line from the previous anchor. In this case, it would be anchor 3. It would create a line or a segment from anchor 3 connecting to anchor 1. When I see this little symbol appear, that indicates that it's going to close it off. So in this case, I have 1, 2, 3 anchors, but I've clicked 4 times. And in this case, I also have 1, 2, 3 segments. The entire path, though, is closed off. So in this case, this is called a closed path. So we have an open path over here, and we have a closed path over here. Now, one of the things that we should also be aware of is that inside of the anchors, there's something special. So inside the anchors, we can actually populate handles. And the handles will create a smooth-like artifact. So if I was to populate handles, they would look something like this. Now, when you populate these handles, they basically will create a smooth-like quality to it. So this dashed line indicates how the segment and path would potentially be manipulated if I populate handles. There's a couple of different ways that I can do that. I can either use what's called the smooth tool or the smooth anchor tool, or I can extract handles by using one of the tools in the pen tool area. So, but these handles basically create a smooth-like quality. Now, when you're drawing in Illustrator, one of the things that you should always consider is that less is more. So I actually want to try to draw things with the least amount of points possible. So what do I mean by that? I basically don't want to click and create an enormous amount of anchors. I want to create the least amount of anchors. So let's say I wanted to sketch what we understand as a Valentine's heart. So let's say I wanted to plot this out with my pen tool and add anchors to it. So if I wanted to do that, one of the things that I need to do is look at a couple of features to anticipate where I would draw my anchors. So first of all, I want to mention that if I was to plot out anchors, or I was to illustrate something with a lot of care, not like this sketch, this was not drawn with care. Let's say I wanted to illustrate a logo and it had a heart in it, and I wanted to make sure I drew the heart as accurately as possible. I'm probably working off of a blueprint or a sketch or a reference image, which is something that we're going to look at and discuss later. So for now, please disregard that I just sketched this really quickly. If I'm going to work with a pen tool, I'm probably aiming for accuracy. With that being said, if I wanted to plot out this heart with the pen tool, so this is the pen tool right here, how would I do that? Well, first of all, I'd want to analyze before I begin. I'm going to look at this object and I'm going to ask myself, how can I draw this in the most simple way possible with the least amount of anchors? Where do I put the anchors? So as you can see here, I'm developing a strategy before I actually try to make it. So where would I put the anchors? There are two places that you would want to anticipate placing anchors on an object. One of them is a change of direction. So I'm going to ask you, where do you see a change of direction? I see a change of direction in two areas. A change of direction can be found here. The line is moving towards the right and sort of moving towards the bottom. So it's going to the right, heading towards the bottom, and then all of a sudden it hits a point and then changes direction. So where I have this change of direction is where I would plot an anchor. So this is a potential place to plot an anchor. Where else do you see a change of direction? Oh, at the bottom of the heart. So the line is moving in this direction, all of a sudden it stops abruptly and moves up. So this is another place where I would potentially plot an anchor. So there's a potential for an anchor here and a potential for an anchor there. So an anchor can go here, an anchor can go there. Where else can I place an anchor? Well, the next area that I want to look at is what's called the extrema. So the extrema is sort of the widest or furthest part of a mound or a curve. So if I look at this as a mound or a curve, where is the extreme outer edge? So I would say it's about right here. So this is my extrema. So this is a place where I could potentially place another anchor. If I look at the next mound, where's the extrema here? So this is a little, I guess, wonky. It's not as nicely drawn as it is on the right. So maybe I have an extrema right here. If I sort of imagine there's an edge, this is the outer edge. Maybe there's an extrema here. This is sort of the point of the mound. Maybe there's an extrema here. Now you're noticing that I'm saying maybe. I'm not being really fixed on where I want to place the anchor because there's some experimentation involved. I'm not exactly sure, but these are the potential places. Maybe I'll put an anchor here. Maybe I'll put an anchor here. Maybe I'll put an anchor here. Now, my goal is to draw this with the least amount of anchors possible. So with that being said, I want to place an anchor with the least amount of points. So I'm going to place an anchor here to begin with. Anchor 1 is going to go here. Anchor 2 is going to go on the extrema on the right. Anchor 3 is going to go on the bottom. And anchor 4, maybe I'll place it here on this outer edge first. That's anchor 4. And then I'm going to close back off onto my shape. Now when I do this, I'm going to click my mouse, let go of the mouse, not leave my finger on it, let go, hover to the next point, and click again. Hover to the next point, click again. Hover to the next point, click again, and then hover to my original point where it's going to close it off. So when I finish this, it's not going to have a curve-like quality. It's going to look more like a polygon. You can consider this a rough draft. A very rough draft, but it's been drawn with great simplicity. So what would that look like? I'm going to use a different color to describe what the path would look like. So if I was to draw an anchor here and an anchor here, this is my first anchor, this is my second anchor, I'm going to get a straight line. Now if I plot my third anchor, it's going to be right there, I'm going to get a straight line. Now if I plot my fourth anchor, it would be right there. Now if I go back to my first anchor, that's going to be a fifth click. And remember, if I click from this anchor to this point, it's going to close that off. So this red line indicates what I drew. The blue line indicates my blueprint. So you'll notice that my line work looks nothing like the blueprint. Now remember, I can extract handles. So if I decide to create smooth on this particular anchor, I'm going to get two little handles that look like this, and it's going to create curvature for me. And when it creates the curvature, it's potentially going to look like this. If I add handles or create smooth on this anchor, it's going to bend this line, bend this curve, and I'm potentially going to get a nice, smooth, light quality. So this dashed line indicates the potential. This is what it's actually going to look like. So I'm initially going to plot out something that's going to reveal a polygonal shape, a very simplistic polygonal shape. Then I'm going to click on the anchors, populate the handles, and then manipulate the curves to make it look like this heart. I hope that makes sense. Now I want to undo what I just drew here. And remember, part of the conversation deals with, I want to draw the least amount of anchors possible. Now, what would happen if I drew a lot of anchors? Well, what would end up happening is that I would still get somewhat of a polygonal looking shape that would look like this. And at every one of these little lines, wherever I stop, I would have an anchor there. So as you can see here, to manipulate this curve, I would have possibly 10 anchors along it. That would be very difficult to refine, really time consuming. And everywhere where two anchors meet, there's a potential for sort of a pinch to occur. So it's not going to be a very graceful line. So that's really important to consider. I want to draw this with the least amount of anchors possible. I want to create the most simple gesture, and I'm going to do that by creating a rough draft. So as I mentioned, we are not going to have an initial drawing that looks like this. We're going to have a drawing that looks more like a polygonal representation of the object. So when we move on to the next lecture, we're going to look at the pen tool. This is the pen tool area. I'm going to tear this away. So this is the tool that's going to allow me to plot anchors. This is the tool that will add anchors if I need more. This is the tool that will delete anchors if I have too many. And this is the tool that will allow me to extract handles. This is called the anchor point tool. So we have the pen tool, pen plus, pen minus, and the anchor point tool. So with these four tools working in collaboration, I can draw really beautiful line work with a lot of control. The pen tool allows me to draw with great accuracy. It gives me a lot of control. It's a precision tool. That means that it's not an efficient tool. So when we work with tools, one of the things that I would like to mention is that tools are designed for either efficiency or accuracy. And you can sort of think of that as a balancing act. You can think of it that if I decide to use a tool for efficiency, it's going to sacrifice accuracy. If I work with a tool that's really weighted towards accuracy, it's going to take a lot longer to use it, so I'm losing efficiency. Now, one of the things that I would like to mention is that as a designer, I have found myself that I tend to gravitate towards tools with greater accuracy. In other words, I like to draw things with great precision and have as much control as possible. So as we start looking at features moving forward, I'm going to start discussing this idea of accuracy versus efficiency. And in most cases, I'm going to say I prefer something that gives me accuracy. So it's going to be a little bit more time consuming, but in the end, I think that it'll serve me in a better way because I'm going to have that precision. There is an area where I like tools to be faster, and that's when I illustrate. So the way that I illustrate and the way that I teach more sort of expressive illustration, not accurate illustration. A logo would require accurate illustration. But if I'm moving or working with something that's more expressive, something that's more loose and fun, then I'm probably going to seek out tools that have more efficiency to them. But we'll cross that bridge and have those conversations later. So I hope that this, this unrefined example that I've created provides some insights as to what to expect when we work with the pen tool. Thank you.